Emma had always thought she understood the quiet rhythm of her life. The mornings she spent drinking coffee by the window, the evenings she wandered through her small apartment with a book in hand. The weekends she lost herself in walks around. The city, all of it, had become her safe space. She liked routine, liked predictability. After everything with Luke, after the heartbreak that had cut so sharply 2 years ago, she needed it. Life was manageable when it stayed simple, when it didn't demand emotional risks. But that night, the rain changed everything. She had been curled on the couch with a mug of tea, her favorite show playing softly in the background, when a knock came at the door. A sharp, insistent knock that made her freeze. She wasn't expecting anyone, and the hour was late. The rain had started as a drizzle, but it had grown heavier, streaking down the windows like a curtain. Her heart gave a strange jolt. The knock came again. Slow, deliberate, almost hesitant. She set her mug down carefully and peered through the peephole. Let Luke dot her breath caught. She hadn't seen him in years, not since he had left without a word, without explanation. She had replayed those months countless times in her mind. The unanswered questions, the silent nights, the ache of his absence. And now he was standing there, soaked in the rain, holding a paper umbrella, looking at her with something in his eyes she hadn't seen in a long time. For a moment, Emma considered shutting the door and pretending he didn't exist. Maybe it was safer that way. But something in the way he looked vulnerable, hesitant, uncertain made her pause. It wasn't just him showing up. It was him coming back in a way that demanded honesty, attention, a confrontation with feelings she had buried deep. "Hi, Emma," he said softly, his voice a mixture of nervousness and familiarity. "Can we talk for a minute?" Emma swallowed. "Luke, what are you doing here?" "I need your honesty," he replied, his gaze steady. "I have a question, and I won't leave until I hear the truth." Her mind raced. A question. After all this time, what could he possibly need to know now? Part of her wanted to slam the door. Part of her wanted to let him in and see what had brought him back. She finally turned the doorknob. "Come in," she said, keeping her voice as calm as possible, though her hands shook slightly. He stepped inside, shaking off some of the rain. His presence filled the small apartment, a flood of memories she had carefully contained. She remembered the way he laughed in the kitchen, the way he had held her hand during long walks, the nights when they had talked for hours about everything and nothing. And she remembered the heartbreak, the abrupt silence, the unanswered calls, the empty apartment she had come home to. Luke sat across from her, awkward yet familiar. I had to see you," he said. "I've carried something with me for a long time, and I can't leave without knowing." Emma's heart tightened. She had spent years convincing herself that moving on meant not thinking about him. That closure came from distance and silence. Yet here he was, stirring up emotions she had thought were neatly folded away. "What is it you need to know?" she asked carefully. He hesitated, then spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you ever think about us? About what we had?" Her stomach lurched. Of course she thought about him. Who wouldn't? But thinking about him was different from wanting him back. She had built a life around the spaces he left behind, and now he was challenging all of that. "I do," she admitted finally. "Think about it sometimes. But I've learned to live with what we had. I don't regret it, and I don't hate it either." Luke nodded slowly, as if that answer was both comforting and painful. "I had to ask," he said. "I needed to know. If you ever really stopped caring?" Emma took a deep breath. She could feel the old hurt pressing in, the familiar ache of heartbreak mixed with lingering affection. "I didn't stop caring," she admitted, "but I've learned to care for myself too." He looked at her then, really looked, and she saw the years of confusion, regret, and longing reflected in his eyes. There was something unspoken in that gaze, a silent acknowledgement of shared pain. of love that had never truly disappeared. They sat in silence for a moment. The rain tapped softly against the windows, a rhythmic accompaniment to the pounding of her heart. She remembered the nights they had stayed up talking, the way they had leaned on each other when the world felt too heavy. And now that world had shifted. They were older, wiser, perhaps more cautious, but the connection remained. Luke started, then stopped. His voice faltered in a way that made her heart ache. I know I hurt you. I know I left without saying why. But seeing you now, I need to know if there's still a chance to make things right. Emma's mind raced. Could there be a chance? She had imagined this moment countless times, sometimes in her favor, sometimes in his butt. The reality was more intense than anything she had envisioned. She wanted to reach out, to close the distance, to hold on to the warmth that had always lingered between them. But she also knew that honesty meant more than fleeting comfort. I can't lie to you, Luke, she said carefully. I've thought about us every day since you left. But I've also grown. I've learned that love isn't just about longings, about timing, trust, and respect. I can't promise what the future holds, but I can promise that I won't lie to you about how I feel. He nodded again, his face softening. I understand, he said quietly. I needed to hear it. Even if the answer is complicated, I needed to know. Emma felt a strange relief. She didn't know what would happen next, didn't know if this encounter would change the course of their lives, but she knew one thing: honesty had opened a door. Even if just a crack. The rain continued to fall, the steady rhythm a reminder that life moved forward, no matter the choices made or the regrets carried. Luke stood to leave, glancing back once with a mixture of hope and resignation. Emma's chest ached with all the things left unsaid, with all the possibilities and risks. As he stepped out into the night, umbrella in hand, she closed the door slowly, feeling the weight of the encounter settle in her chest. Part of her wanted to run after him, to demand more answers, more reassurance, more closure. But another part knew that some things required patience. Some truths needed to be lived with for a while before they could be fully understood. Alone in the apartment, Emma sank back onto the couch. The rain against the windows seemed louder now, echoing her thoughts. She realized that the night had changed her, that the past had returned not to haunt her, but to remind her of the depth of her feelings and the strength she had gained. Luke's question lingered in her mind. Not just the one he had asked, but the larger question of what she wanted, what she deserved, and what love truly meant. She had faced heartbreak before, had learned to protect herself. But she also knew that love, even complicated and imperfect love, was worth confronting, worth understanding, worth giving space to breathe. And in that quiet, rain-soaked apartment, Emma made a silent promise to herself. She would face whatever came next with honesty, courage, and an open heart. Because sometimes the heart demanded risk, even after heartbreak. Sometimes it demanded truth. The night stretched on, filled with the sound of rain and the memory of him standing at her door. Emma didn't know what would happen tomorrow, or the day after, or the months to come. But she knew this much. Luke had returned with a question, and she hadn't lied. And for the first time in a long time, that truth felt like a beginning, not an ending. The day after Luke had knocked on her door, Emma felt as if the world had shifted. Nothing in her apartment seemed the same. The sunlight that streamed through the blinds in the morning looked different, brighter somehow, as if it were highlighting the questions she hadn't dared to ask herself. Her phone buzzed constantly with notifications she ignored because none of them mattered. All she could think about was Luke and the words he had left hanging in her living room the night before. She had tried to convince herself that it was just a brief, awkward encounter, that it didn't signify anything beyond curiosity or a fleeting need for closure. But the truth clung to her mind. Every time she made coffee, she remembered the way he had looked at her, hesitant but longing. the corners of his eyes carrying memories neither of them could forget. Every time she opened a book, she caught herself imagining him sitting across from her, speaking words that had never reached her ears. Her phone buzzed again. This time, she answered immediately. "Emma," Luke's voice said, calm yet urgent. "Can we meet? I promise it's important." She hesitated. Her first instinct was to say no, to protect the fragile peace she had built over the past 2 years. But the thought of avoiding him, of pretending she didn't care, felt heavier than any fear of disappointment. Okay, she said finally. "Where?" "I'll be at the cafe on 5th and Main in 30 minutes, he replied. "I won't be long, I promise." Emma dressed quickly, choosing something casual, comfortable. Something that didn't feel like armor but still allowed her to face him without fear. Her hands shook slightly as she grabbed her bag, her heart racing. She told herself it was nerves, but deep down she knew it was hope, the kind that scared her more than anything. The cafe smelled like freshly baked bread and roasted coffee. The kind of smell that made people linger even when they had no time. Luke was already there, sitting at a small corner table, sipping black coffee, looking like he belonged to a world she had almost forgotten. His hair was slightly longer, his clothes more relaxed, but his eyes were the same, full of thought, of questions, of emotion. "Hi," he said softly as she approached. "Thanks for coming." "Course," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. She took the chair across from him, noticing how familiar it felt to be near him, yet so strange after all this time. There was a silence between them at first, not uncomfortable, but heavy with unsaid words. Emma could feel him watching her, gauging her reactions, and she could feel herself doing the same. Every movement, every glance carried meaning. "I've thought about this moment a lot," he said finally, "and I've realized I made mistakes. I hurt you, and I walked away without explanation. I was selfish, and I regret it." Emma nodded slowly. She had imagined this moment, but hearing it aloud made her chest tighten. She wanted to tell him that she had missed him, that the nights had been lonelier without his laughter, that she had wondered about him every day. But she didn't. She waited. She listened. "I need to ask you something," he continued, leaning forward slightly. "Something I can't live without knowing." Her stomach tightened. She had been waiting for this, dreading it, hoping it wouldn't come, hoping it would. "What is it?" she asked, her voice calm but quiet. He took a deep breath. "Do you see a future where we could try again?" Emma felt the weight of those words press down on her like the rain from the night before. It was simple, yet devastatingly complex. She could feel the past 2 years flashing through her mind, the laughter, the arguments, the intimacy, the heartbreak, the unanswered questions. Could she open her heart again? Could she risk it all? She started, then stopped. Words were harder than she expected. She wanted to say yes immediately, to throw caution to the wind, to let the warmth she had never stopped feeling guide her. But honesty mattered. Love mattered more than fleeting desire. "I can't lie to you," she said finally. "I've thought about us every day since you left. I've wondered what could have been. But I've also grown. I've learned to care for myself, to set boundaries, to understand what I need. I don't know if what we had, could work again. Not yet, but I won't lie to you about my feelings." Luke's eyes softened. Relief, gratitude, and lingering longing mingled in them. "I don't need an answer right now," he said. "I just needed to ask. I needed to know if there's a chance, even if it's small." They sat in silence, the sound of the cafe around them fading into the background. Emma could feel the connection between them, electric and real, but she also felt the caution she had built over the years. This was not a decision to rush. This was about understanding, about trust, about time. "You've changed," Luke said. After a while, his voice gentle. "You seem stronger, happier, at peace." Emma smiled faintly. "I've had to be. Life doesn't wait for anyone. I've learned to carry my own weight. But that doesn't mean I've forgotten the past. He nodded slowly. Neither have I. The conversation drifted, moving from the past to the present. They talked about their jobs, mutual friends, even trivial things like the weather and the new bakery on Main Street. But under the surface, every word carried significance. Every laugh, every glance, every pause was loaded with emotion, unspoken, questions, and tentative hope. At one point, Emma realized she had forgotten to check her phone, had forgotten to worry about time. All she could think about was him, about the man she had loved, the man who had returned with a question that had reopened her heart. Luke reached across the table, lightly touching her hand. It was a gesture full of history, familiarity, and careful respect. Emma didn't pull away. She let her fingers brush against his. And it felt like coming home and stepping into unknown territory at the same time. "I don't want to rush you," he said softly. I want to be honest. I want us to be honest with each other, no matter what happens next." Emma nodded. That was all she could ask for. Honesty, time, space, to understand her own heart. "I can promise you that," she said. The cafe began to fill with the evening crowd, the clatter of cups and chatter creating a rhythm that mirrored their emotions. They both knew this meeting wouldn't decide everything. It wasn't an answer. It was a conversation, a step, a chance to explore what had once been, and maybe, just maybe, a chance to rebuild something real as they left the cafe. Walking side by side under the city lights, the world seemed to feel different. The streets were quieter, the night warmer, the possibilities endless. Emma realized that love wasn't about certainty. It was about willingness, courage, and facing the truth even when it scared you. They paused at the corner, the moment stretching between them like a fragile thread. Luke looked at her with an intensity that made her chest tighten. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for being honest, for not lying, for giving us a chance even if we don't know what it looks like yet." Emma smiled, a mix of hope and uncertainty in her eyes. "We'll see," she said softly. "We'll see what comes next." And in that small, ordinary moment, the world felt extraordinary. Its two hearts, once broken, now daring to find each other again. Two people older, wiser, and willing to face their feelings honestly. Two souls connected by a past they couldn't change. And a future they didn't yet understand. Emma watched Luke walk away, her heart both heavy and light. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, or the day after, or the months to come. She only knew that she had told the truth, and in that truth she felt the spark of something real, something worth exploring, something worth risking. And deep down, she realized this. Sometimes the questions that scare us the most are the ones that lead us to the answers we've been looking for all along. For the first time in years, I felt hope. Not the naive kind that ignores the past, but the steady, cautious kind that grows from honesty, understanding, and the willingness to try again.